joined by someone that's very, very special to me, professionally and personally. This gentleman is the most ethical, highest of character, conscientious leader that I think I've ever met. And I'm proud to say that he's my business partner. Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Wow, that was the best entrance I've ever had, Nick. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's all true, man. Mike is an ECU grad, Bachelor's of Science in Construction Management. He has well over $500 million of constructed work, some in the magnitude of well over $100 million projects. Red Bull Stadium and or arena is one of them. I believe that was 162 million. And Conrad New York Hotel, what was that, Mike? About 120 million?
Yeah, it was about 120 million. Super fast track job too.
If you give people some perspective on jobs of that size, like how many people are working to manage projects of that size, just to give people perspective?
Yeah, so Red Bull was 162 million. It was built from the first pilings that drove into the ground until a couple days before opening day game is when we got our CO, which was a 2-year project. I would say at the peak, we had about 350 people, tradesmen, working on site. And our management staff, so we were the construction manager. We held all the subcontracts, awarded all the work, managed all the schedules and cost, finance and contracts. We had, I would say, 18 to 22 people in management on that project, from executive, senior PM. I was the senior PM. 4 project managers beneath me, 3 assistant project managers beneath them, a general superintendent, 3 to 5 superintendents under him.
Wow.
At any given time, plus an admin, a full-time accountant on the project.
Just one admin? Only one admin?
I think we did have one admin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I lost track of how many that was, but I would say around 18.
Yeah.
18 management.
That's an awful lot. So as a senior project manager, can you just give me some broad responsibilities of what you were responsible for on a project of that size?
Yeah. So I had a strong understanding of the finances of projects, cost control and cash flow forecasting, and that was very important to our company at the time. The construction manager we used to work for was owned by a bank, so finances and financial forecasting was very high priority to them. As well as cost control, meaning the processing, identification and processing of change orders. And on that particular project, we had, so the final contract value was 162 million. We had, I want to say, about $25 million in change orders, primarily due to a complete redesign of the interior of the space, all the club suites and amenities spaces, where they actually got rid of their interior designer, totally redesigned it mid-project, like about 6 months in, and that really drove the changes on the project. So with that kind of turmoil, having someone strong in the financial side of things to keep the project moving and protect the company that we were working for, as well as the subcontractors, from getting those costs submitted, reviewed and approved with the client which in this case was Red Bull of Austria, and getting their signature on them so that we can keep the work going in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say my primary job was handling all the financial side of the project. Secondary was kind of oversight of the project managers and their communication with the field superintendents, and then a third tier level of responsibility was anytime where there was a real complex design issue that was starting to get stalemated and kind of like a bottleneck for the project. I would have to jump in on those key
Mm-hmm.
issues
Sure.
and work out those details between the subcontractors and the design professionals and material suppliers and all that.
Yep. Got it. Mike and I's path, we met while we were working together at Hunter Roberts Construction Group. In fact, I believe it was at a U2 concert. We knew of each other. I knew Mike, Mike was about 5 years younger than me. I knew he was running some of the largest work in the New York City, North Jersey market. And I was in the Philadelphia market running some of the largest work in Philly as a project manager. And I think we met at a U2 concert. It was a kind of a Hunter Roberts subcontractor type outing, I believe. But met you and your wife, and I believe your wife was pregnant at the time, if I remember correctly. I think she was pregnant with your son.
Yeah, she was either pregnant or we were like 2 weeks after having my son.
Okay.
I think that's what it was, actually. I think he was born like 2 weeks before.
Okay.
And, maybe 3. And we had gotten away for the night, went to the concert, stayed in Philly, and then went home.
The first night out, probably, right?
Yeah, first night out. Absolutely.
Got it. So Mike and I actually had very similar paths. We actually worked at 2 different companies, same companies. I also Skanska USA. You spent a little time with, as did I. And you started at Henderson Group right out of college, correct?
Yeah.
As a project engineer, what was your responsibilities as a project engineer?
Yeah, so right out of college, so I went to ECU for construction management and got home back to New Jersey and was just, I think this is funny at the time, this will date us. I believe I faxed a number of resumes out as well as emailing them.
Fax, what's that?
There were no Indeeds at the time
Mm-hmm.
to utilize. And I just fired off resumes, and in about a week, Henderson Corp out of Bridgewater, New Jersey, got back to me for an interview, and ended up getting hired with them. And so I was a project engineer, which is like kind of your first step in a lot of these construction management, general contracting firms, large firms. And your role there is you're basically the point man between the project manager who's above you on your firm and the subcontractors, and you're processing what's called submittals, which are basically product information sheets that are submitted to confirm that the materials that are going to be installed by that subcontractor are approved. They're the right material, the right flooring, the right structural studs, light fixtures, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big paper processing kind of role, but it also teaches you a lot about the details and how to be organized.
Read the specifications.
The granular level of construction,
Mm-hmm.
which is a different aspect from, as you advance to a senior level role where you're more high level, global management. You're actually deep in the weeds and details as a project engineer, making sure that everything that shows up to the site is correct, and when it gets installed, it's going to be accepted by the design team and ultimately the owner.
Yep. And oftentimes there's shop drawings as part of the submittal process, which really gets into the details of what they're installing, and it allows the design team to review it, as and I always call it the last line of defense, if you will. Like this is you get it submitted. So if the architect approves it, that's their one last chance to make any changes on their design. And
Yeah.
they often get approved as noted, which there's minor comments, and then we can proceed with ordering the materials.
Yeah, and also another point to note, which was a lesson learned on my first job. There's also material submittal, sample submittals, often for color or texture, and those also get approved in many cases. And when those materials arrive to the site, a good project engineer who knows what they're doing should be going out there and bringing the sample out and checking that it is in fact the material that was approved.
Yes.
And it matches.
Yes.
And I had a little kind of entrance facade wall in front of our main entry vestibule, and I did not check that on my first project, and the decorative brick showed up. Actually, it was decorative block to be specific, and it was about 8 or 9 courses up. Probably 2 days worth of work, and the superintendent was like, "Man, that block looks awful pink. Is that the right color?" And sure enough, we brought it out there, and it was not the right color, and that was a little situation we had to work our way through.
Yeah. Yeah. I have
That was
one.
the last time I didn't check a material that showed up on the job site.
I'll share one that I have shared in the past. I was doing a Hilton Garden Inn hotel, and standard undercuts on doors are 3/4 of an inch. The pad and the carpet that was designed was much thicker. So we didn't coordinate, and I'm the engineer at the time, assistant project manager, and that was my responsibility, coordinating that undercut to make sure it was enough to get, over the flooring, and we had to cut 282 doors. That was one I'll never forget.
Oh yeah. With union carpenter rates, that one added up quick.
It added up. Absolutely. Yep. We got through it though. So after Henderson, you had a short stay at Skanska, which is actually very similar to me. I was only at Skanska, I think, about 1.5 years. I think that's about what you were too as well, right?
Yeah, about 1.5 years. Yep.
And then Hunter Roberts for approximately 6 years, Mike? Was it?
Let's see, 2005 to 2011. Yeah, so it was only 6 years. Mm-hmm. It seemed much longer.
And then you went to the Holder Group.
Yep.
What was your role there? Yeah,
so as I went from big project to big project with Hunter Roberts, and at the time, so we had finished the Red Bull Soccer Stadium in 2010, March of 2010. About February 2010, I got pulled into New York City because the economic downturn closed our New Jersey office, and that got absorbed into Manhattan. So we were commuting. I was commuting quite a ways, about 2 hours each direction, and so that's when I worked on the Conrad New York Hotel. And after about 2 years in New York City, my son was born. I kind of wanted to get out of that long commute. I was leaving the house at 5 a.m., getting home at 7 a.m. at best with no traffic. And, my first kid was born, and I was only seeing him on the weekends, essentially. So I knew it was something I didn't really want to do long-term anymore. And in addition to that, I was kind of getting, I wanted a little something more, and I didn't really know what it was at the time. So when you're working in the field, in any construction field, you are constantly getting reached out and contacted by headhunters. So one day I was particularly unsatisfied with what I was doing at work, and a headhunter, reached out with an interesting opportunity to be an operations manager for a smaller GC in North Jersey called the Holder Group, and went on many interviews. I think there was 4 or 5 different interviews that I went on, and it sounded very promising. I'd be the kind of second in charge of the company, other than the owner slash president, founder slash president, and there was also an incentive to kind of work my way into an ownership role. So it was something that really piqued my interest, to kind of call my own shots, develop my own kind of culture, and how to treat our employees, how to treat our clients and subcontractors, that I was kind of lacking at that point with Hunter Roberts. And also I was interested in developing into an ownership role, and also saw it as a way to kind of have the latitude with my time and my own schedule, so that I could start balancing home life a little bit better, which was, in my opinion, very out of whack at the time. Knowing full well that I want to be able to attend games and practices and coach sports here and there, and all that stuff. And that was not going to happen working in Manhattan for a large firm. So I took a shot, and not the right decision. It was a very disorganized company, of which, even though I was second in charge, I had little control in ability to, change directions. After going there, I found out that one of the senior guys there had only been there for 4 years. Really good dude, really good superintendent, and he said, I want to say in the 4 years he was there, I was like the 28th employee that had come in and or left. 28 employees. Like, there was only 7 people that worked there, and 28 had come in and out. So
that's nuts.
You can figure out the level of dysfunction in that environment. And coming from a super organized couple of companies in a row on mega projects, and our change orders were bigger than the largest projects that this company had done, and they were still unorganized. It was not a great fit.
I guess the headhunter didn't share that with you, huh? They didn't share that?
No, he definitely did not. Definitely left those details out. And if you're ever getting contacted by a headhunter, I would definitely ask for the turnover of the firm. That's the last headhunter I dealt with, so I hopefully we'll never have to do that again. But,
lesson learned, yeah.
So, what that opportunity did give me, though, is the time to start seeing that there is an opportunity to start a company, and if this company had been in existence for 15 years, as dysfunctional as they were, I started to see an opening that, maybe it is possible, because I always did want to. Always was interested in people that had their own businesses, in or out of construction. But a lot of my friends had painting businesses and landscaping businesses, and I always wondered, like, how do you do it? Like, in a small, suburban market, like, how do you keep that work coming in and those jobs? Like, it kind of dumbfounded me. But having that opportunity to see a small business in operation, and the different projects that do come up, even for a firm that's not super reputable like that, gave me the confidence that it was worth a shot to try to open up our own firm.
So when did you decide to open up MP Consulting Services? When?
Yeah. So I was at Holder Group for 5 months, and about 4.5 months in, we were not winning a lot of our bids. We were like, number 2 on like 5 or 6 bids in a row. We didn't have a lot of work going on. So I was starting to feel uncomfortable, like this isn't very stable. And also recognized that the gentleman who owned the business, he had contacts, but he didn't have good relationships that would pull him over that, number two bidder threshold. Ideally, the number two bidder is probably the best spot to be in construction, because you probably have the job correct. The low bidder, more than likely, if they're drastically low, they probably don't have the job correct, and there could be problems as an owner. So being in that number two spot in privately held bids is a perfect spot to be in, but he didn't seem to have those relationships. So with that writing on the wall, and one of the subcontractors that I knew also kind of bringing it to my attention, like, he doesn't seem to have much work. Like, you're a pretty big salary, you're, the biggest overhead there, is your job secure? And I started to think about it, like, probably not. Like, he doesn't need a director of operations if there's not much operating going on. So I started to set some things in motion over that last couple of weeks, making contacts at some of my old clients, hearing about some smaller jobs that they had coming up, that if I did make the leap, I could get on their bidders list. And about 2 weeks after I started, researching like that, putting my feelers out, I ended up getting laid off. The guy came to me and was like, I'll let you go.
Yeah.
Which was really, it's funny. I hated being there. And it was one of the more stressful time periods I've ever been through. I hated being there. It was like a toxic scenario. And I saw it on the writing on the wall, but being laid off for the first time in my life was like a mega blow to the ego. And it was hard. It was like, I felt like, I don't know, I felt lost. Even though I wanted to leave, it wasn't like, I didn't call the shot. It was kind of like getting broken up with, in a sense. It was like, oh my God, like, you're letting me go?
But a relief too, though, right?
Oh yeah. I slept better that next week than I probably ever have in my life, not having to go back into that environment. But at the same time, I was like, holy crap, I got let go. Like, I never imagined I would have been let go from anything. When we were at Hunter Roberts and they laid off, 300 employees, like, I was one of 10 left from New Jersey. Like, so that was hard. Even though I wanted to, which is kind of interesting, It shows how your ego can take over sometimes, even though you want something, and if it's not on your term, it it hurts a little bit.
So you opened up MP Consulting Services, I believe, in 2011, correct, or 2012?
2012. Yep. Yeah, April of 2012. And so we are 8.5 years in.
Yep. And I partnered with Mike going on 6.5 years ago. So originally it was called MP Consulting Services, which is our legal name. Then we changed it to MPC Builders just to give clients more clarity of what we do. Is that how you would describe the DBA name change?
Yeah. So when I started the company, I kind of saw my role as being like an owner's rep, not so much a general contractor. And the difference being, like, I'd be a consultant to a larger client, and kind of oversee the general contractor for the client. But that business model is great in New York City, but not so great in a smaller county of New Jersey. There weren't a lot of opportunities for that. So only about 6 months in, I kept being asked to be just the general contractor. Like, we want you to build this for us and just give us the price to build it, and you hire everybody else and deal with it. So I very quickly transitioned to be a general contractor, and 98% of our work since has been from a GC standpoint. So the name took a little while to evolve,
Mm-hmm.
because we were starting to build a name for ourselves, and a couple of years ago we decided to make the switch to MPC Builders as our kind of trade name, for marketing and clarity purposes.
Yep. Got it. Now, what was it about construction that led you down that path? Like, why construction? When did you know you wanted to get into the construction management world?
So when I was a young kid, probably like 10 years old, 12 years old, um, there was my parents were divorced, and my mom was dating a guy who actually like owned. We lived in New Hampshire, and he actually owned like this whole side of this mountain, and I would say is probably 500-600 acres, and he was like a kind of a developer. Like he was like a site contractor. Um, heavy equipment. He kind of like put the roads in and created the home pads and kind of developed this land. And he was kind of like the first person that I knew in the construction world. And, we didn't have a lot of money, they were pretty well off,
Mm-hmm.
or he was pretty well off, he skied a lot. It was just kind of like a lifestyle that I admired.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that like construction gave that to him.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably, between 11 and 12 years old, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they dated for a few years until we ended up moving back to New Jersey, where my mother's family was from. But yeah, he was like my first example of like you can be pretty successful like building things. And then from there, I kind of always had like that interest in the back of my head. But there were times I thought I was going to be a police officer or detective, and
Mm-hmm.
different things like going through high school. And then when I went to college, ironically, there was a freshman, single credit freshman required class at ECU first semester, and it basically like talked about the 10 most needed industries for future graduates, like
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know if they say the
Over the next
hottest.
10 years or
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like
Right. Mm-hmm.
the 10 biggest fields
Mm-hmm.
requiring future professionals over the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And construction, the trades as well as construction management was one of them. And it highlighted the fact that the majority of, say 75% of the workers in those roles were 55 and up already. And this is in 2000, and actually 1997. So, and then it gave a background of what construction management is, and ECU actually happened to have one of the better construction management programs in the country. That was a relatively new program, but it was like a top 5 or 10 rated program in the country. So I said, all right, I want to do construction management. And I took a couple classes that next semester, and then I chickened out because I saw a couple of pretty difficult trigonometry and structural engineering classes coming up on the course list, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to pass those. I didn't have the confidence to think I'd be able to do that. I was pretty lackadaisical at the time. So I withdrew from the program and was just taking liberal arts classes and wasting time and money and credits. And probably about 2 semesters went by. But during that time, I wanted to get in-state tuition. So I needed to go to school part-time and work full-time to establish residency in North Carolina. And, in-state tuition was a difference from like 20 at the time, like 25 grand a year to like $2,500 a semester. So it was a drastic savings, and for a
Yeah.
kid who had no money whatsoever, that looked pretty attractive. So I framed houses for about 10 straight months, and most of them were like little, Eastern North Carolina ranch homes, a lot of which was actually off-campus housing, but I kind of got a feel for construction a little bit again. And when I went back full time the following fall, I said, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna buckle down. Every time I've tried, I've been able to succeed in a class. So I'm just gonna have to do my homework. And sure enough, I got like an A in both of those classes that I was scared of, and the rest is history. So luckily I went back into it, and a couple of years later, I graduated with a construction management degree.
How about Physics 1 and Physics 2? How'd you do on those?
I don't even remember. I don't remember. I did pretty well in most of the math courses and the core courses. Statistics, ironically, I did really bad in. I think I got like a D.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like a statistics guy now, which is kind of ironic.
Yeah, that's surprising.
There's the difference between like, college smart, academic smart, and functional smart. Like, so I'm sure a lot of your future listeners will appreciate this. Like, it was the way I did my problems and got my answer that was wrong. I got the right answer, but the way I got to it wasn't the way the teacher wanted me to do it.
Got it. Yep.
So, instead of getting a 98 or 100, I got like a 72 because I didn't do all the steps that they wanted me to see. Right. As if there's a right way in the real world.
Most of those professors and teachers, I don't think ever worked out in the real world. So
no, exactly. Theory and functional.
Which actually leads me to you're actually an adjunct professor. You did that for a short stint, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was traveling around Pennsylvania, Philly, New Jersey, and New York, teaching different job site groups how to do financial forecasting for construction, working place forecasting, it's called, and also like cost control systems. The head of risk management for Hunter Roberts at the time was an adjunct professor at NYU's Schack Institute of Real Estate. And it was their master's in construction management program. And the course was financial and cost controls. So she asked me to guest teach one class in like the fall semester, and teach what I was actually the same thing I was teaching all the people from Hunter Roberts. And I did that for the fall semester. Then she asked me to come back again in the spring. And then the following fall, she couldn't teach the course and they needed somebody to fill it in. And she recommended me, if I was interested, she recommended me to NYU. So I ended up teaching that for, I think, 2 semesters. And it was really interesting. I actually did it. Initially, I did it as a guest to overcome a fear of public speaking. I was like, even though I was, working my way up in the company and I could run a meeting on a job site, and I was on like medium-sized, $20, $30 million jobs at the time. I was comfortable running a job site meeting, but the thought of actually standing up in front of people and public speaking about a topic, like, I would get cold sweats, and not have moisture in my mouth. And
I think that's pretty normal.
I mean, totally shut down.
Sure.
So that was like, I was like, well, there's no better way to get over that than being
force yourself to get out there
on an island in front of a bunch of actual professionals, not even students. These were like professionals that are working either for construction firms. A couple of them were grad students that hadn't actually worked in the field yet, but most of the students, there was probably 18 or so in each class, were either professionals for large scale developers in New York City, or project managers, project execs for construction firms.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a group of people who actually had some knowledge. So you couldn't fake your way through it by any means. But yeah, that totally alleviated, not totally, but alleviated a lot of my fears of public speaking for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I love about you, and there's many, but your desire to challenge yourself and challenge me too, which I've learned a ton from you over the last 6+ years, and also holding yourself accountable and holding me accountable, and people in general. The accountability is something I think everyone needs at certain levels. But just your desire to want to keep challenging yourself, which is something I want to do too, and we have been, and we'll continue to do so. It's an admiring trait, man. Definitely is.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's hard when you're, in the past 8.5 years, I haven't had a boss. I haven't had a superior.
Yeah.
And when you don't have a superior, you have to go out and find people to like challenge you and like find things to challenge you, because like there's no challenge to your way of thinking, your point of view. There's and that's not a good position to be in for any topic in life, let alone running a business.
And so, how lonely it can be too. You're out there by yourself, just trying to figure it out. Like it can't be explained unless you try to do it and try to build a business. It's there's so many words for it. So many words for it. So what do you think, if any, COVID-19 is going to change our the construction industry at all? What do you see long-term potential changes from everything we've been through the last six plus months with COVID?
It's hard to say in the big jobs. Construction was uniquely situated to handle something like that because we're always familiar with and implementing PPE, personal protective equipment. So now that we kind of have an understanding of COVID more, and it's not like the first month where we had no real understanding of how it was spreading and how deadly it was. If something like this continues or comes up again in the future, I think that the construction industry will not skip a beat. Instantly know what where PPP is and throw those procedures in place and be off and running. So I don't see it impacting construction all that much in the future. I really don't. Economically, we're seeing in my area of the woods, and I'm sure others, suburbs of cities, like a mass exodus of people living in those cities or wanting to live in those cities. Some driven by the fact that their companies that they work for don't require them to be in their desk in their office anymore. So we are seeing a big exodus down to our area of New Jersey. People buying houses, buying land, wanting to build houses. So our home building business is, I think, going to really take off even more so over the next year or two. And that, more than likely will be sustained. I don't see, even if things completely die down, I still see people not wanting to live in crowded buildings and areas anymore. So it just in case this happens again. So I can see like residential, single family residential being big by me, multifamily residential on probably a smaller scale, with more like exterior entry as opposed to common hallways and, common space amenities, I think. Hospital industries and healthcare in general, I think will have a ton of work coming up because they're going to be retrofitting their emergency rooms and check-in areas for a future pandemic to separate pandemic related clientele from
Mm-hmm.
people that are there just because they got in a car accident or broke their arm, and not mixing those populations. So that's going to be a big industry going forward. Distribution centers for e-commerce was already taking off like a rocket ship, and that's going to probably
Crazy.
triple, I would imagine,
Yep.
because
Yep.
people who weren't using e-commerce, like the
Mm-hmm.
elderly, are now
Now
ordering
they
their
are.
groceries and
Yep.
ordering their paper towels online, and
Yep.
that's just going to expedite that industry even faster. So yeah, I mean, it'll probably drive construction in many different market sectors, I would imagine. Um,
Yeah.
That fortunately for our industry, I think it'll create a lot of economic movement,
Mm-hmm. I agree. Definitely.
and maybe
Um,
even higher ed. Maybe even we're big in higher ed, and maybe even higher ed will reimagine some things.
mm-hmm.
There'll probably be more like retrofits for virtual classrooms, so they can easily just flip the switch and go from
Yeah.
in-person instruction to just
Yeah.
the professor standing in the office or the classroom by themselves broadcasting,
Yeah.
and maybe even in lower ed,
Mm-hmm.
elementary and high school levels,
Yeah.
retrofitting the tech involved with being able to broadcast school.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to tone down the commuting for sure. Going to work. There's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to be allowing that. Obviously, you need to be the right person. With the right response. Responsible party to do that. But yeah, there's going to be many changes in respect to that. Also, a little bit about the Cure JM Foundation and how that came about, with your daughter. I'd like you to share that.
Yeah. So 3 years ago now, just over 3 years, she was diagnosed with a really rare autoimmune disease called juvenile dermatomyositis. It affects 2 to 3 children out of 1 million in the U.S. each year. So U.S. population is 300 something million. So it's, maybe 600 cases active in the U.S. Of all ages. So it's super, super rare. And it affects the muscle tissue and skin cells in their shoulders and neck area, as well as their legs and hips, causing muscle weaknesses and rash. And extended cases could lead to an inability to swallow and breathe properly, and so on. So it's a kind of a range of symptoms. And fortunately, we caught her really early on, and she responded really well with treatment. But it being a autoimmune disease, it will always live inside of her and can flare at any point in time. So, it's a real hard thing to process as a parent with a sick child. And after about the first year, we started, just processing it ourselves. We started to get more involved with the only foundation in the country that is dedicated specifically to this disease, juvenile myositis, and that's the Cure JM Foundation. And we started getting involved with them just with support groups, and went to their national conference, and just kind of educating ourselves on the disease and upcoming treatment potentials, because the treatments right now are, basically high doses of steroids would have really nasty side effects. And then there's intravenous IVIG, and a very low dose chemotherapy drug called methotrexate. So right now Ryan's just on methotrexate once a week. She had 11 months of steroids, 24 months of IVIG, and we're on our like 37th month of methotrexate. So hopefully she'll be completely in remission and medication free in the near future. But seeing what she had to go through and what our family had to go through, you know, steroids make a child, usually these kids get it around 3 years old. 2 to 4 years old is a pretty prominent age to come down with their initial flare. And, you know, the steroids really wreak havoc on them. They blow up like balloons. And, you know, like she went from 22-pound 3-year-old to a 42-pound, you know, 3-year-old in 2 months, 3 months, and wild mood swings and, you know, just lack of control mentally like that. And then hearing what the foundation is doing, it's like a family-driven foundation, and it could use support. Support for outreach, support for fundraising. So we started to get involved with fundraising. And this past year, I decided that we were going to donate 10% of our profit from each of our projects to the Cure Jam Foundation, to help further fundraising and really try to make an impact in finding safer treatments and funding research for safer treatments, and hopefully one day a cure. But even safer treatments would be a life changer for these kids, and maybe even for Ryan if she ever flared down the road. An alternative to steroids would be a huge game changer for her and for us as parents, you know, worrying about starting back at square one with her disease. So right now, yeah, we're donating 10% of our profit from every project that's awarded to us, and we make that donation in honor of the client that chose to award the project to MPC. So, you know, I think that, you know, having a named charity for a business kind of cements the legacy of the business. You know, you're not just out there to make a profit and, you know, and take that profit for yourself as the, you know, business owner or operator. And it kind of shows our clients like who we are, what we stand for, and that, you know, choosing to work with us is going to a greater cause as well.
Yep.
And I think that, you know, any businesses that do that, you know, how do you not support them? You know, if all things were equal and our bid is the same price as the other guy, and we can build a great building or a great house, and so can the other guy, like, how can you not go with the guy who's taking 10% of what he's going to make from your project and you know, donate it to a cause like that?
Yep. Great cause. And it's incredible to me that it's so, the percentage that have it, it's so low. And I guess that's why there's no pharmaceutical, you know, treatments, you know, whatsoever. Right. I mean, it's just these shots.
I mean, there's no incentive to create, I mean, say there's 600 kids and most of them go into remission by 15. So, like, you know, there's no incentive to create new medications to treat a population of 300 people, you know, actively, maybe less at any given time. So, you know, actually all of the treatments for this disease come from what's called off-label uses, meaning, you know, such and such medication is developed to treat, you know, arthritis, which affects a larger population. And in other clinical trials, it's found to be useful in this disease. So the FDA will approve an off-label use for that drug. And every drug that is used to treat a child with JM is an off-label use. So that's some of the research that we're doing with Cure JM right now is getting involved with like-minded drug treatments that are like in the same family of symptoms, and funding the clinical trials to then allow the FDA as well as insurance companies to be used in our cases.
Got it.
So yeah, it's interesting to get really involved with a foundation like that. Any philanthropic organization, and the level of work involved with it, and it's very, very rewarding. So regardless of what industry you get into, if you can kind of align yourself with a philanthropy like that, it goes a long way.
Are you considering creating a nonprofit? I believe I heard you to talk about it before.
I am, yeah. So a woman we know through one of the coaching programs I'm involved with has a foundation called Hope Loves Company, and they have camps for child caregivers of where one parent or the other parent has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And through talking with her, it really sparked an interest to create even a once a year camp that would be free for all these families with JM, which aren't many, but to kind of gather in one spot, unlike a camp activity, maybe go for hikes and kayaking, and have some personal development / support speakers and services, and try, just to get that community together and make people realize that there are other people like them out there, because a lot of people don't know anyone. I know of 5 families in New Jersey, and a handful in the greater Philadelphia area, and that's a lot. If you're in Missouri, there might be 2 families in the entire state. So you do feel kind of alone in those scenarios, and I think it would be a really cool way to give back to that community and support that community in the future.
You were doing.
So it's something that's in the back of my head.
You had reached out to a few of those families, and weren't you doing a little? Was it a Zoom call? Have you done any of those lately?
Yeah. No, I did. So one of the fundraisers I'm doing is this endurance hike called 29029, and the event I'm going to is going to be in Vermont. It just got moved to 2021 because of COVID. It's supposed to be in October of 2020, but it's 17 hikes up Stratton Mountain in Vermont. You hike up, take the gondola down, and repeat it 17 times until you've climbed the equivalent of Mount Everest, 29,029 feet. So, and you have to complete it in 36 hours. So as part of that event, I created a fundraiser called Ascent to a Cure. 100% of the proceeds go to Cure JM. If anybody wants to support it, it's www.crowdrise.com/ascent2a-cure. And that's in my LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram profiles and whatnot. So as part of that, I wanted to interview 17 different families of Cure JM children to tell 17 different stories of how they made it through, how they're making it through, how their initial onset was, and whatnot, and to try to build that community and share those stories that with the Cure JM world, that everything you're going through, other people have too, and a lot of these people have made it. A lot of these kids have gotten out and hit remission and whatnot. And I think that's really important, because when you don't have other examples of people who've conquered the challenge, it seems a lot more hopeless.
Yeah.
Or a lot more difficult or hard to overcome. So I've done, I think, 4 of those interviews so far. Fortunately for my interviewing lack, the event got postponed to 2021. So now I'll be able to finish those interviews.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, but yeah, that's been a lot of fun. You know, being able to know those different people and staying in touch with them and stuff. So hopefully this process will also inspire other people to come up with any event that they want to enter, any type of a challenge or whatever, and just, you know, get more involved, support the foundation, get more outreach going, and kind of share what they're going through with one another, and create more of a community.
Excellent. Yeah, the things that COVID has changed. I mean, we missed our second jam walk this year in Philly, and I was surprised how many people were there last year. They must have been coming from pretty far away, I would think, right?
Yeah, a lot of friends and family get involved.
Yeah.
I would say there's probably like I would say close to 100 people in that walk.
Yeah, it was decent. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you know, maybe as far as Pittsburgh went there, there's 14 chapters. So, you know, some are of greater distances than others. We're the Philadelphia chapter we're involved with. The New York one is on Long Island.
Okay.
I'm not really sure where the next closest chapter is. Maybe DC might be the next closest one. So, yeah, it's a pretty big area.
Yeah. Got it. So what do you like to do outside of work? What are you passionate about? Hobbies? I mean, I know, but share and share our newest one, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, anything that keeps me active. That's one of the things that I felt was lacking when I was a commuter working with a big firm. Was that like physical activity and health and that side of the balance equation. So, you know, exercise of any form is huge, you know, stress manager, and you just feel better. And I'm always trying to like find some type of a hack to get better clarity, better energy.
Yes, you are.
So I'm willing to try anything. I'm kind of a human guinea pig in that sense. You know, personal development, as you know, we've gone to Tony Robbins conferences and Lewis Howes conferences and different coaching programs we've been involved with.
Awesome.
So that's definitely a passion of ours, and very important, I think, for anyone, really for anyone, but especially for people that have the stress of building and maintaining a business. It's kind of a lonely world, and to find other people in that same boat is really helpful. And through this 29 training program, hiking, we've been doing a lot of hiking, especially since COVID. And you and I just went on a half of what we wanted to do, but it was in all, it was a 15-mile, 6,000 vertical foot backpacking trip. And I think we'll certainly be doing more of that in the future. Completing the Pemi Loop up in New Hampshire is on the list for the next year, and I think I want to do a rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon, man.
As another one too. That's always been like a bucket list dream of mine, and I think it's time to cross that one off the list this year. So
Utah,
2021
Montana
is going to be it.
Yeah. I want to hit them all, man. Utah, Montana. We talked about Seattle too. Just some great places to check out and hike for sure. Yep.
Physically challenging.
Yeah.
Unplugged from the day to day and social media and emails and just time to think and talk, and it's nothing better than that. Ultimate reset.
Burn 5,000 calories too. That's not too bad. What was that? 29,000 steps? Is that what it was?
29,700 steps.
It's incredible. All in a day and a quarter.
With a 36-pound backpack on.
I think I felt it the most. I was feeling it for a week and a half.
Oh, me too.
So for our listeners that are out there interested in construction, whether it be union and or open shop labor, what would be your best advice to someone listening that wants to get into construction, not necessarily construction management, but labor of any type, skilled trades? What would be your advice to someone that is interested in getting in construction?
I would say if they're like in the high school age group, trying out the tech schools, the trade schools, is an option. You can also, maybe work some Saturdays or summer jobs with, any of the trades. Someone that might have a subcontractor business, or a home building business, and just get out on the job site any way you can, and get a little taste of it and feel for it.
Yep.
It's not too much of a commitment to do it that way, but you can kind of just see the inner workings. Obviously, if you did go to school, definitely do summer internships to make sure it's the right fit. If you're going to college for construction management or engineering background, definitely do internships, so that you don't go all the way down the road and graduate and then realize it's not really for you. Just get a feel, and if you're not sure which one it is, see if you can try a few of them out. The small non-union residential type businesses are always looking for responsible people to work, even if you have zero technical skill. They'd be willing to train you as long as you show up on time and put in a hard day's work. So that's probably the easiest and least committed way of doing it, before you commit too many resources to it. But get a feel for what it's like on a job site a little bit, and see if it's right for you. Even going to work with someone that just to shadow them for a couple of days.
I love that idea. Yeah. Just get a little taste of the field experience. Yep.
I've had a couple of high school kids drive around with me for a few days over a couple of different summers, just seeing if it was for them. They're considering different fields to go into for college, and we worked for a couple of weeks here and there, even just cleaning up. You get a kind of feel for what it's like out there.
Yep. I like it. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, man. I learned some more things about you. Good stuff.
It was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Do you have any questions for me at all, or anything else you want to put out there?
No, just we're trying to build our social media following. So follow us at Instagram at MPC Builders, Facebook at MPC Builders. My personal is Michael Parnell _NJ, like New Jersey. And if you'd like to get involved with any of our fundraisers for Cure JM, the links to those are in our all three bios for those pages. And just follow Nick's podcast. Keep listening and sharing it. And there's a lot of people out there that don't really know what they want to do. And this podcast, I think, is giving people a little inside scoop and taste of a number of different construction trades, as well as other trade related work for different industries. And the best way to figure out what you want to do in life is to listen to other people who've already done it. So keep listening and keep sharing, and good luck with the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it, brother. Good having you, man. And
yeah, man, anytime.
I'm sure I'll be talking to you this week.
Sounds good.
Have a good night. Get back to your
you too,
your son's soccer, right?
Yes.